Okay, gewaltig. We're up to the Nun Amar Aleph. Today's Yud Gimel Adar Aleph, Tanya Esther. It's also my father's yahrzeit. We have to daven to Rebbeinu Shloim. First of all, that Klal Yisrael should be safe and sound wherever they are in the world, and the Neshama of Rebbe Yisrael and Yitzchak should have an aliyah. So let's see the Heilige Gemara. Loi hikrivu keves b'boiker. The Gemara, the Mishnah discusses what happens if they did not bring the Tamid Shel Shachris. I'm not focusing over here. Okay, much better. Amar, right? Amar Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon said in the Mishnah, V'chula, and this is in reference to the Ketayras, V'chula ha'isa kraiva bein ha'arbayim, she'ein melchankim mizbeach hazov ela b'ktaris hasamim. A lot of cryptic messaging in this Mishnah that the Gemara is going to explain. Fragt Gemara chinuch man dechar shemei. What chinuch are we talking about? The Mishnah goes on to talk about the chinuch of the Mizbeach hapnimi with Ketayris, and the chinuch of the Mizbeach hachitzoni with the Tamid. Zogt Gemara chisur mechsur avachichtoni. There's some more words required to be added to the Mishnah. Lo yikrivu keves baboiker. What if they were not makriv the Tamid shel shachris? Zogt the Tanakama lo yakrivu bein harabayim. Don't be makriv the Tamid shel bein harabayim. Zogt the Gemara is still in the Tanakama. When do we say you shouldn't be makriv the Tamid shel bein harabayim? Shaloi nischanech hamizbeach. That's if the mizbeach, meaning we're on day one. We're on day one, and we haven't yet inaugurated the Mizbeach. Avol neschanech HaMizbeach. But if we've already done the Chinuch HaMizbeach, the Mizbeach has already been inaugurated, meaning we're already l'dorish, we're no longer on the first day, then yakrivu bein harabayim. Then even the Tanakama holds you should be makriv the Tamid shel bein harabayim. Reb Shimon, Zok Reb Shimon, even though you're saying Tanakama that you should be makriv the Tamid shel bein harabayim on a regular day post Chanukas HaMizbeach, that's only bisman shayu anusam or shegin. That's if they didn't purposely omit the Tamid shel shachris. Avalim hayu mazidin. But if they purposely omitted the Tamid shel shachris, loy hikrivu loy hikrivu loy hikrivu keves baboiker. Then lo yakrivu bein harabayim. What about lo yiktiru k'toris baboiker? What if they weren't maktir the k'toris in the morning? There we don't say this knas. Rather we say yaktiru bein harabayim. So Rab Shimon is making a distinction. If they omitted purposely the Tamid shel shachris, then they don't bring the Tamid shel bein harabayim. But if they omitted purposely the k'toris baboiker, they are going to be maktir the k'toris of bein harabayim. Minan amili. Where do we know such a distinction from? Where does Reb Shimon get this distinction from? Zok to Gemara, the Tana Rabbanon. It says v'esakeves asheni tasa bein harabayim. So once again, we could claim that we have a Lublin strikes again, because the pasuk that we're quoting is in Tetzaveh, as a keves achot tasa v'aboiker, as a keves asheni tasa bein harabayim. Shnei bein harabayim v'loy rishon bein sheni bein harabayim v'loy rishon bein harabayim. The second Tamid of the day needs to be brought in the afternoon. The first carbon of the day, the first Tamid, the Tamid shel shachar, is not allowed to be brought bein harabayim. When do we say that? That shaloi nischanech hamizbeach. If the mizbeach was not yet nischanech, avol nischanech hamizbeach. But if the mizbeach was nischanech, afilu rishon bein harabayim, you could even bring the first carbon bein harabayim. So the pasuk in Tetzaveh is speaking about the chinuch hamizbeach. It's actually referring to when they were starting off operations in the Beis Hamikdash, and it's telling us, and the Torah specifically says you have to bring both. If you look at Rashi, v'loy rishon bein harabayim, that's actually later. Rashi does analyze the psukim. Let's see where it says. The psukim do speak out that you have to.
It's the same carbon, isn't it? The Shel Shachar and Ben Arbaim. It's the same formula.
Exactly. It's the same carbon. It's a regular. It's an oila. If we look at the psukim actually tell us that. In Tetzaveh, and then the other one is in I believe Pinchas. But let's look at the one at Tetzaveh, and it speaks out that you have to bring two. Let me see where I could find the pasuk. It's at the end of Tetzaveh. And here we are. Here it is. It says specifically, V'zeh asher tasa ala mizbeach kavasum b'neshana shnayim lo yom tamid. So there, only in Tetzaveh, in Pinchas it doesn't say this. Only in Tetzaveh, the Torah precedes the parsha of the Talmud by saying you need to have two per day, meaning if you miss the first, you don't bring the second. Then it says it's a keves echot haseva boiker because a keves nasheni tasa bein harbaim. So the Gemara doesn't quote the pasuk that precedes this, but Rashi does quote it and says that in Tetzaveh, when we're talking about the Chanukas HaMizbeach, there it's mandatory to have the Tamid Shel Shachar. So lo yikriv keves b'boiker, lo yakrivu bein harbaim. Lo yiktiru k'teres b'boiker, yaktiru bein harbaim. That you should do. We know in the Mili. The Tanur Rabbanim v'Sekev Hashem Tasha Ben Arbaim, Sheni Ben Arbaim v'Lo Risha Ben Arbaim, B'Med Var Mum Shol Nischan HaMizbeach, V'Nischal HaMizbeach, Afilu Risha in Ben Arbaim. Even if the first carbon of the day is Ben Arbaim, the two carbonis will be independent. Oh, here it is. Shom Lo Yakrivu B'Boiker Lo Yakrivu Ben Arbaim. The Hachi Midrash Kra in Tetzaveh that we just saw. Im es akeves ha'echot tasa b'boiker. Only then is huchsher sheni likarev bein harbayim v'iloi loi. B'mei davar mabum shaloi nischan chamizbeach the high crop bechinachsev. The pasuk in Tetzaveh is speaking about the inauguration of the mizbeach. The chsiv lo ilminate because the pasuk prior to that, as we just saw, is v'zdasher tas al mizbeach beparshus v'yata Tetzaveh. But once we're talking about ongoing operations in the Mishkan, and in Pinchas, it doesn't say that in the Parsha of Pinchas. V'tani b'sefri, haikra loman emar, like for number l'mayla b'Parsha, es hakeves echot tasa v'boiker, v'es hakeves hasheni. Why do we need the pasuk of Talmud in Pinchas if we already have the parsha of Talmud in Tetzaveh? So tomorrow Shnayim Umakir v'loy Arba to tell us that there's only two karbanos a day and not four. Okay, so now the Gemara has a question: why is Ketores any different? When do we say that you could bring the Talmud Shal Ben Arbaim even though you didn't bring the Talmud Shal Shachris? That's only if it was an Oinus or Shagig. But if it was on purpose that they omitted the Talmud Shal Shachris, then v'loy ikrivu keves b'boiker, then lo yakrivu bein arbaim. Lo yakrivu keves b'boiker, lo yakrivu bein arbaim. Frank the Gemara, is that so? Is that so that if they didn't bring the keves b'boiker, they don't bring it bein arbaim? V'chikayhanim chatu mizbeach bottle, because the kayhanim didn't have there, and they didn't do the Talmud Shal Shachar, so that the Mizbeach has to suffer and not get the karbonis that it's supposed to get. In our Nusach of the Gemara, it says, Lo Yiktiru K'tois B'Boiker, but the Bach takes it out. The Bach just says, V'chi im Lo Yikrivu Keves B'Boiker, Lo Yakrivu Ben Arbayim, V'chi Kayhanim Chotu Mizbeach Bottle, Omarava Hachi Kamar, Lo Yakrivu Hain, Aval Acherim Yakrivu. The crew that purposely didn't bring the Talmud Shal Shachar, they lose their schus to bring the Talmud Shal Ben Arbaim, and we're going to have to bring in another crew to do the Talmud Shal Ben Arbaim. Why is that? Why do they only make this knas to throw these guys off their job and bring in replacement workers? if they omitted Tamid, why don't we do the same thing if they omit the Ketores? So the Gemara, because nobody ever omits the Ketores. Even the Shchicha Uma Asra. First of all, the Ketores is something that's less Shchiach, and therefore it's not likely for this to happen. But there's a secondary reason. Uma Asra, everybody knows that a person who does Ketores becomes wealthy, and that's why we say Chadoshim lebekarim, only new people who never had an opportunity to be makter the Ketores, only such a coin would be included in the goyrel to be able to have that schos when they split up which avoidance would be done by which koyanim. So everybody was lining up to be makter Ketores. Chachamim didn't need to make a gzeira or a knas as to what happens if someone purposely omits Ketores, because it's not going to happen. Chaviva lahu, it's dear, v'loi pashi, it's not going to happen that Ketores would be omitted. As Rashi says, Dila ashkiach, it's not likely that it'll happen. The tamid oilahu v'avagav d'loi karva ela trei zimni b'yoyma. You might ask, the frequency of the carbon tamid is the same as the frequency of the Ketores. True, but ika oilois achrini de mekarvi kol yoyma tuva. There's many carbonates oil that are brought throughout the year, so it's not exciting. It's not a big deal to be makter and oila. Upashi. Therefore, it wasn't so appreciated. It wasn't so exciting to do, and it would be possible that they would neglect to do the avodah and miss a carbon. Therefore, that's why Bez is not the concept. Nowhere, because you can't bring Ketores as in the Dova. So Ketores is only brought twice a day. So there are far fewer occurrences of Haktaris HaKetores than there are of the Hakrova of a carbon Haila. That's one shot. Never would one person bring Ketores more than once. It's always a once in a lifetime opportunity. No one ever got a second turn because Ma'asro Ma'asheres Kedichsiv Yosimu Ketor Ba'pecha Uchsiv Basrei Baruch Hashem Cheloi. So you see that Hashem is Mevorach, someone's Farmegan, someone's estate, if they bring Ketores. And therefore, there was no reason for the Rabbanan to issue a Knas, because it's not going to happen that someone would give up an opportunity to bring his Ketores. Zog to Gemara weiter. Amar Reb Shimon, v'chuloi shekreva bein harbayim, you would bring the full mana of Ketores bein harbayim if you missed in the morning. Shed mechanchenes mizbech hazov el b'Ketores asamim shal bein harbayim. For the Gemara, we have a brayse that says that the chinuch hamizbeach was not with the Ketores of bein harbayim, rather it was b'Ketores asamim shal shachar. So it's a machloikis tanoim with what was the Mizbeach HaKetores initiated. Was it with the Ketores brought in the morning, or was it with the Ketores that was brought in the afternoon? Amar Abayim, Mistaver Kamadobah Ketores Asam Shal Bein Harbayim. It's more mistaver to say that the first Ketores brought was that of Bein Harbayim. Tichsiv Baboiker Behetivoi Esaneris Yaktirena. When would they be makter Ketores? By the Hatavas Haneres, which was done in the afternoon. Ilav the Ovid Hadloka Me'urta Hatava B'tzafra Mehecha. How could you do Hatavas Haneres in the morning if you didn't light them the night before? Hatava means you clean them out and you prep them again. It means the night before there must have been Hadlokas Haneres, and that's when the Ketores would have been brought. Ulamandamar b'Ketores hasamim shel shachar, and the Mandamar will hold that the inauguration, the initial Ketores was brought in the morning. Gomar mimizbeach ha'ila mala alan b'tamar shel shachar, just like the mizbeach ha'ila was inaugurated with the tamar shel shachar. Afkan b'Ketores hasamim shel shachar. Zog to Gemara weiter. How did they inaugurate the shulchan? Only by placing the lechem aponim on it on Shabbos. Zog to Gemara, Aval b'choil ichnuchi hu deloi mechanach. you couldn't inaugurate the shulchan by placing lechem on it, the lechem aponim on it, not on Shabbos. Hakadusha mikdash, but it's mashma that it would still be effective in being mekadesh the lechem, because we know by placing the lechem on the klesharis of the shulchan, it receives its kedusha, and once it receives its kedusha zaguf, it could become nicer. Sagt the Gemara, he guva kamash malon. The chinuch v'kiddush the shulchan b'Shabbosu. No, we're saying that both items happen only on Shabbos. You're only mekadesh the lachem, and you only mechanech the shulchan by placing the lachem on the shulchan on Shabbos. The chinuch v'kiddush the shulchan b'Shabbosu kidikatani seifa v'lo yes hamenorah ela b'shiva neiroiseha bein harabayim. Now, by the neiros as well, it's not only the chinuch, but there is no kiddush over there by the menorah. So let's see what Rashi says. Kidikatani seifa u'menorah eino mikadeshes. The menorah is not mekadesh the oil. Kloimar v'chol milsa dida eino ela bein harabayim. All of the action on the menorah is bein harabayim. The hainu hatloka. Everything that needs to be done for the menorah is done bein harabayim. What needs to be done? That loka. Hachanami kol mili delay. All of the functions of the, just like by the menorah, all of its functions occur bein harabayim. So too the shulchan, all of its functions are done on Shabbos. Now, by the shulchan, of course, there's two functions. There's the function of chinuch, but there's also the function of kiddush. But we learn from menorah that all of its functions are occurring in its designated time. By the menorah, it's bein harabayim, and by the shulchan, it is on Shabbos. Tana Rabbanan, zeu keteres she'also liyochid al hamizbeach hachitzon. But in Parashas Nesim, it says kaf achas asar azov malaya keteres. Each of the Nesim brought a kaf achas malaya azov malaya keteres. This is the only keteres that was ever brought for a yachid on the mizbeach hachitzon. V'hayrosh shah haisa. It was a Hayrah Shah to allow keteres of a Yachid and keteres to be brought on the Mizbech HaChitzon. Heicha, where did this occur? Omer Apapa b'Nesiyim, this occurred by the Nesiyim. So it's mashma that what's unique is that it's for Yachid al Mizbech HaChitzon. When these two things are combined together, that's where it's a Hayrah Shah, because that couldn't occur anywhere else. Which is mashma ela yochid ala mizbech hachitzon hu daloi. The whole chiddush was that a yochid brought keteres on the mizbech hachitzon. Mashma ha al mizbech hapnimi makriv. Are you telling me that it was routine for a yochid to bring keteres on the mizbech hapnimi? We know that's not the case. Keteres is only brought as a communal offering. Visu ala mizbech hachitzon yochid hu daloi hatzibor makarvoi. Are you saying that the unique thing about the Mizbech HaChitzon is that keteres was brought by a Yachid? It's mashma that it would have been the norm, it would be routine for keteres of a tzibor to be offered on the Mizbech HaChitzon. But we know that's not true either. V'atanya yochel yeh Yachid misnadev. Umevi kayotzeba nedava. You would have thought that a Yachid could also be makriv keteres. The kayer aniba. And you will call it moitzes v'sechet tishmor v'sisa, meaning it's a proper neder that needs to be fulfilled. Just like harei alai oila, Talmud loimer lo yisalu olav ketayre zara. The pasuk, I believe in the Tzav again, says you should not be maila on the mizbeach ketayre zara. Let's see if we can quote the full pasuk. Lo yisalu olav ketayre zara v'oila umincha v'nesach loy sischolov. So this, I guess, is talking about Ketara Zara. Yochel lo yeyochid mevi shein mevi chayvasoi kayotzeba. So this is speaking about the mizbech hachitzon. So you would have thought that only a yochid may not bring Ketayr Zara on the Mizbech HaChitzon. Why? Because he never has a Chiyav. There's never a time where a Yochid is Mechuyev in bringing Ketayrs. So therefore, he cannot bring Ketayr Zara. He can't bring Ketayrs as an Adava on the Mizbech HaChitzon. Aval Tzibur, but maybe Tzibur could bring an Adava. Aval Tzibur, yeah, maybe should be able to bring an Adava. I'm not sure how there'll be a Nidvas Tzibur, but the Tzibur would be able to bring an Adava, as Rashi says. Why? Shemevi Chayva Kayotzaba, because they bring Keters. Talmud Lomer Lai Salu. They should never bring Keters at all as an Adava, even the Rabbim, because Lai Salu is Lashon Rabbim. Yochel Yalu al Mizbeach HaPnimi, Avol Yalu al Mizbeach HaChitzon. Maybe when it says Lo Yalu, it's only referring to Mizbeach HaPnimi. How do you know Ketores of a tzibur cannot even be brought on the Mizbech HaChitzon? Talmud Loimer, Eshem Mishcha, Ves Ketores Esamim, La Kodesh, Kechoil Asher Tzivisicha Yasu. Do only precisely what the tzivui of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the Torah. Ein loch elo ma she'amar be'inyan. The only thing you're allowed to do is specifically what's listed, which is the Ketores, the daily Ketores of Chiv in the Mizbech HaPnimi. That's the only thing you're allowed to do with Ketores. So Amar Papa Levi Boikamar. So now we need to explain why does the Brayso that we just quoted say that the Hayras Shah was dafka because it was a Yochid on the Mizbech HaChitzon, when we've just proven quite clearly that a Yochid cannot bring Sai on the Mizbech HaChitzon, Sai on the Mizbech HaPnimi, and even the Rabbim can't bring an Adava, Sai on the Mizbech HaChitzon, Sai on the Mizbech HaPnimi. So what is the Mishnah, what is the Brayso that we quoted seem to indicate that the whole Chiddush was that it was Yochid B'chitzon? Zogt Gemara, no, it's a Loimi Boi Kamar. Loimi Boi Tzibra al Mizbech HaChitzon. The Lo Yashkechan, you don't find ever that should be done. V'loimi Boi Yochid al Mizbech HaPnimi, and it's poshut that a Yochid cannot bring Ketores al Mizbech HaPnimi. Again, the Lo Yashkechan. Ela afilu Yochid al Mizbech HaChitzon. The Ashkechan b'Nisiyim. Even a Yochid bringing Ketores Adov on the Mizbech HaChitzon is not allowed. You did find such an occurrence that it did occur by the Nisiyim. There, Torah Shah Isa, and it doesn't apply, and you cannot do that again. Okay, Gabaldik. Chaviti Kohen Gadol. We know that the Kohen Gadol every day had to bring 2 karbonos mincha, a half of Yisarin in the morning and a half of Yisarin in the afternoon. And the Mishnah is going to teach us that he couldn't bring them piecemeal. He had to bring a full Yisarin to the Beis HaMikdash every morning with him, and they split it in half there in the Beis HaMikdash, and then they were makter half in the morning, half in the afternoon. He can't say, right now in the morning, I only need a half, I'll bring a half. Tomorrow, in the afternoon, I'll bring you another half. It doesn't work that way. Chaviti Kohen Gadol, loy hayu boin chatzayin, ella maybe isaroin shalem, v'chaytzayu, and in the Beis HaMikdash, they split it in half. Bakriv mechza b'boiker, umachza bein harbayim. Kohen shemevi mechza shachris umeis. A Kohen Gadol brought his full Yisarin, they split it in half, and half they were makriv on the Mizbech as they were supposed to, and the other half they were waiting for the afternoon, but in the meantime, the Kohen died. So now this half of Yisarin can no longer be brought as a mincha because its owner is not alive anymore. And uminu Kohen achetachtov. Right away, another Kohen Gadol was put into place. Like in Iran, as the new leaders are appointed, they're bumped off almost before they could even get inaugurated. They bumped off. Trump said we had in mind who might take over the leadership, but they're getting bumped up so fast that all of the backup plans we had are dead already. He said that. So here they had the second coin, but the second coin survived. Uminu koyin acher tachtov. You can't tell this coin, okay, for today, we only need a half of Yisarin, so today you don't need to bring the full Yisarin, just bring a half Yisarin. You don't say that. V'loi Chatzi Yisarin basically v'loi Chatzi Yisroinoi Shal Rishon. And you don't tell them, listen, don't bring any. We still have an extra half of Yisarin left over from the morning. That's not what you do either. Elamevi Yisarin Shalom V'chaytzeyu. He brings a full Yisarin, the second coin in the afternoon. He splits it in half, and makriv mechza umechza of it, and half gets burnt, gets destroyed. Nimtzu, so the sum total for today would be Shnei Chatzayin Kraven, the half of the first Kohen Gadol and the half of the second Kohen Gadol. You're going to be Makriv on the Mizbeach, Shnei Chatzayin into two halves, meaning the half left over by the Kohen Gadol Shemeis, and the half that they had no purpose for on the new Kohen Gadol, Oivdin, get destroyed, which means it gets burned. Tanu Rabbanu, Ilu Nemar, if I would have said in the pasuk Mincha Machtis. So let's look at the Lashon HaPasuk. The Lashon HaPasuk is Ze Korban Aaron Uvanov Asher Yekrivu Hashem B'Yom Yimashach Haisai Asir Sa'ifa Soilas Mincha Tamid Machatzitza B'Boker U'Machatzitza B'Erev. So Zogt Gemara Il Nemar Mincha Machtis Hayisi Omer Mevi Chatzi Yisorin Mibeisai Shachris U'Makriv Chatzi Yisorin Mibeisai Arvis U'Makriv. But it doesn't say that in the pasuk. What it does say is Machtzisa B'Boker U'Machtzisa B'Erev, which tells us that Mechze Mishalem U'Makriv. He has to be Makriv, part of an Yisorin, half of an Yisorin, but half of a full Yisorin. So he has to bring a full Yisorin and take half of it. Okay, tzad, maybe Yisorin Shalem, you bring a full Yisorin, V'chaytzeyu, and they split it in half, U'makriv Mechza B'Boker, U'Mechza Bein Harbaim. What would happen if Nitma Mechza Shal Bein Harbaim? What if the second half became Tomei and now can no longer be brought as a Mincha Adam Mizbeach? Or somehow it went missing? You might think for that second half, he doesn't have to bring a whole new Yisarin. Just fill it up with the half Yisarin that's missing. Even the half of the Yisarin that's brought in the afternoon has to be half of a whole. So what does he have to do? He has to bring another maybe Yisarin Shalom Mibeisai, another full Yisarin from his house in the afternoon. V'chaytzeyu u'makriv mechza u'mechza avad. Nimtu the same thing. Shnei chatzayin kravin u'shnei chatzayin oivdin. Zok the Gemara. Kan gadol shikriv mechza shachris u'meis u'minu acher tachtov. You might think that the new Kohen Gadol should bring a half a Yisarin for this afternoon, or just use the half a Yisarin that was left over by the first Kohen Gadol. Talmud Leimer Machtisa Ba'erev Mechza Mishalem, who maybe each Kohen always has to bring half of a whole, Umakriv and Bimakriv. Okay, tzad maybe Yisarin Shalem. The second Kohen brings an Yisarin Shalem v'chaytzeyu Umakriv. Umechza avad nimtu shnei chatzayin oivdin ushnei chatzayin kraven. So the Brisa presents us with two scenarios. Either the Kohen Gadol died, that's why we needed to start over again in the afternoon, or because the second half became disqualified, became tamei, or became lost. Tani Tana Kamed Rab Nachman Mechza Rishon Umechza Sheni to Ubar Tzurason v'yetzu leveis hasreifa. The leftover half from the first Kohen Gadol that was nifter, the half of the mincha that the Kohen Gadol that was appointed in its place also gets left over, but you don't burn them right away. You have to first let them become nicer. Amalei Rab Nachman, Bishlama Rishon Ichsila Krava. I could understand why the first Kohen Gadol, his leftover half a Yisarin, needs to be Uba Churasan, because Lamaisa, it came in the morning and it was intended for a krava. It was he got the kedushas aguf of a mincha, and then he died. So since it was once destined to a proper akrava, we can't just burn it. We have to wait till it becomes nicer. Elasheni lamali ibur tzura. The second Kohen Gadol, when he brought the full Yisarin, at that time it was known that the other half would not be brought. So that, why don't you burn it right away? It was originally destined to be destroyed. So what you shouldn't need Ibur Tzura. So therefore, Elasheni Lamala Ibur Tzura may Karl Ibud Kai Kaasi, when it was originally brought, it was destined right away to be burned. Zok to Gemara, the Amar Lachmani, who told you this halacha that the Kohen Hedjit, I'm sorry, that the second Kohen, his half a mincha, is Ubar Tsurason? Who says that? It's Tantna Devei Rabba Baravuahu. And Rabba Baravuah explained it, because he said, Yomar, Afilu Pigel Ton Ibur Tsura. Even if it's so puzzle like pigel, you don't just burn pigel. You wait till the pigel also becomes noisar, and only then do you burn it. And therefore, even though this was destined to be burned from day one, it should be no better than pigel, and it should need ibur tzura. Toshva says, how do we know that pigel needs ibur tzura? The yalef avoin minoisar, it says v'nas avoinoi by pigel, it says v'nas avoinoi by noisar. Noisar had ibur tzura. That's what noisar is by definition, and therefore pigel requires this as well. So if even pigel requires it, it's not so fair that this mincha should require it as well. Rabbi Ashi Amar, afilu tema rabbanon. Even if we're going according to the rabbanon, where pigel doesn't need ibur tzura, but kibun the beidna the palgi behu, when the kohen brought the whole isar in the afternoon to the base of mikdash, he had a choice at that moment. He could have picked either half Yisarn to use for his mincha. Up until the point that he selected the half Yisarn that he did, they were both chazi la'krava. Michsa chazi, that's why even the half of Yisarn remaining from the coin of the second half of the day, even his needs ibur tzura. Itmar, chavite kohen gadol, keitzad oisen oison. How do we prepare them? How are they prepped for the mincha? They're baked, they're fried. First they're baked, and after they're baked, then they are fried. Zok Rashi, they're baked. I guess you finish it off by frying it. Okay? That is what the shita of Rabbi Yochanan is. Rabbi Asi Amar Rabbi Chanina, first you fry it, and only then do you bake it. Rabbi said, I think I am right. Why? That you bake first and then you fry. Why? Because it says tu fine. The pasuk says, if we look at the pasuk inside, the pasuk says, Al machvas bashem tasa, or teasa, I think it says, yeah. Al machvas bashem teasa, mirubeches teviena, tu fine minchas pitim takriv rech nechoich l'Hashem. So what does this tu fine mean? Zogt Rabbi Chiya, I'll tell you what it means. Tu fine taifena no. It should be a nice baking. What do you mean a nice baking? We all know when you fry blintzes, they get some brown spots on it, right? It's never perfectly white, unless you remember the chef Paul from Capagoda. He was able to make blintzes perfectly white. But usually, when you fry blintzes, they get a little brown. When you're going to bake them, you're going to break something that's pre-browned. That's not so nice. It has to be a beautiful baking, meaning you have to bake it when it's pure white. That means you have to bake it first, and only then could you fry it. Ravasi Amar, no. Kavasei di mistavra, that you fry it first. Mistavra tufine toifena, no. It has to be a beautiful frying, which Rashi explains. Toifena, no. It says about a korban pesach, no means partially cooked. Doesn't mean completely raw. So Rashi, toifena no, b'shas afiyasa b'taner, when it's baked in the tanner, tehi no. It has to be partially cooked already. Kamoy al toichlim mimenu no. Kloimer bekach tehei mivushalas ksosai. When you bake it, it has to already be somewhat cooked. Ve'ena mivushalas kotzarcha. It has to be somewhat cooked, but not fully cooked. V'hainu tigun, that's the frying that you fried it on its surface. The baham moidu chula alma titarvaya b'inon k'dichsiv al machbas v'shem nuchsiv tufinei. Everybody agrees that it has to be fried and it has to be baked. The question is the sequence. So Rabbi Yochanan says you bake it first, and Rabbi Asi says you fry it first. Rabbi Yosy has a third shita. So Teifena no, Rabbi Yomer Teifena no. it should be a beautiful it should be a beautiful cooking, which would also mean that it has to be beautiful. Okay, so Zog to Gemara, Rabbi said to no, which would be similar to what Rabbi Kibarba said. Rabbi Yosy Amar Taifena Rabba. He holds both, meaning Islay no v'Islay no. He holds, according to the first Pshat and Rashi, that it had to be baked twice. It had to be baked when it was beautiful, meaning you bake it before you fry it, then you fry it, and then you need teifena no, you have to bake it when it's partially cooked in oil, so you bake it again. So it's baked, it's fried, and it's baked. So Eli Shoichet has a very cute, not Eli Shoichet, Eli Svansky has a very cute video of a cooking show. And someone prepared the minchas chavitin, and two guys are tasting it. So one said, I love the crunch and the softness. I can tell you baked it first and then you fried it. And the other guy says, no, it has this texture. I can tell you fried it first and then you baked it. And then they asked the cook himself, what did you do? He said, what do you mean? I did both. I baked it, I fried it, and I baked it again. He said, Chavite kohen gadol lishason va'arichason va'afiyason bifnim. All of its processes have to be done in the Azara. V'doichos es haShabbos, and its preparation will even be doichos Shabbos. In other words, you can't prepare it from before Shabbos to bring as a mincha on Shabbos, because it's daily. The kohen gadol must bring it every day. Minan immediately. How do we know this? Amar Afuna toifine, the same pasuk we were darshaning in a moment ago. Toifena no, it has to be beautiful. The ofila me'esmal, you know what happens if you bake or fry something that's a day old. Inshava gets bloated up with air, and it doesn't have the same beauty as freshly prepared. Matzka for Rabbi Yosef, Ema de chavish lo b'yarka. They had preservatives in those days. If you bury it in vegetables, in greens, that helps it maintain its freshness. So who said it had to be prepared that day? Maybe they could just prepare it the day before and bury it in vegetables and yerek. Rashi says, it won't let it come in contact with air, and that would keep it fresh. Why didn't they do that? The Rabbi Shmuel Tana, it says tase. It says te'ase, right? Te'ase. Part of the avodah, of the daily avodah, is to make it as well. Va'afilu b'Shabbos, te'ase va'afilu b'toma, even if it's toma, it has to be made that day fresh. Abaya Amar Kra, soiles mincha tamid. Hooray, who can minchas tamidim? It's like the mincha that came with the carbon tamid. Rav Amar, and so again, it has to be made daily. Rav Amar al machvas melamed shetuna kli. It tells us that it needs a klisharis. Zok Rashi, it needs a klisharis. Va'afilu moedidoi v'chatzi yisaron. Even though you measured it with the keli, the measurement keli, that's a half a yisaron, she'enoi nimshach, that was not made into a klisharis. Al korchach afiyosi mia b'machvas klisharisu. It has to be baked in a klisharis. Malam shetuna kli. The ofila me'esmoil. Now, if it has to be baked in a klisharis, that means it retains its kedushas aguf. It gets its kedushas aguf at that point. Once it's in the klisharis, and once something is kedushas aguf, the clock starts ticking, and it would be possible belina overnight, and therefore the ofila me'esmoil ifsul lei belina. It would become possible belina. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll be mamshich Be'ez Hashem. Oh, now as far as learning on Purim, 6:25 is Vesikin. Does anybody have any interest in learning at 5:25? Otherwise, I believe 7:00 is the first is a regular first minyan, and we can learn at 6. We don't have a big oilim who attends in the morning. So what should we do? Or should we just leave it and pick up on Shushan Purim? To learn when? Between the two Megillas? So if you want, we could learn after the first Megillah. The first Megillah will start at about 7:05, right? About 40 minutes. So 7:05, which means by 7:45, between 7:45 and 8, we'll be finished davening tomorrow if we daven at 6:25. So should we learn at 8? What? Tomorrow evening is very, very, very hard to. I mean, in the evening. I mean, in the morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning. David, does any specific time work for you?
I don't know. I'm not sure what the schedule is where I am. I have to check.
So should we plan with tentative and adjust if necessary, or should we give up? You want 6? Okay, so let's do 6. Let's try to do 6. So David, let me know if you could do 6.
Okay, 6 I can probably do.
Okay, so let's do 6, and we'll have it at 7:10. Okay, perfect.
Go
See you
ahead.
tomorrow at 6.
Go
I
ahead.
won't drink too much tonight. Okay,
How about this afternoon?